forefoot strike running may be more economical than heel strike running is elastic strain energy may become more abundant when you land with a forefoot strike when you run. This in turn could enable more efficient accelerations, partly because it may significantly reduce the amount of muscular effort it takes to propel the body forward. A 2020 study in the journal Applied Bionics and Biomechanics, which is linked down below this video in the description box, found that forefoot strike running gave better results for improved energy efficiency as compared with heel strike running on account of forefoot strike running enabled more involvement of the tendons, ligaments, and muscles of the lower leg to store more elastic strain energy as compared with heel strike running. The study compared the rates of elastic energy potential and impact generation in habitual heel strike runners and in habitual forefoot strike runners, and found that the habitual forefoot strike runners had nearly 13% more spring energy in the lower leg than the habitual heel strike runners. This was because in the study, the habitual forefoot runners, upon a net touchdown, had greater ankle plantar flexion, which means the front of the foot pointed down prior to a net touchdown. The habitual forefoot runners also had 16% more hip flexion and 40% more knee flexion or more knee bend upon a net touchdown than the habitual heel strike runners. These increases in ankle plantar flexion, knee flexion, and hip flexion upon a net touchdown in the habitual forefoot strike runners also had the direct effect of reducing impact peaks by 42%, reducing the average vertical loading rate by 80%, and reducing the vertical instantaneous loading rate by 64% as compared with the habitual heel strike runners. Essentially, the habitual forefoot strike runners, there were big reductions in the opposing forces known to put the leg, especially the knee joint, under strong pressure. This set of data also means is that landing with a forefoot strike during running engaged three mechanical outputs, which were increases in ankle plantar flexion and increases in knee and hip flexion. These three mechanical outputs produced lower impact collisions. There was less burst of high impacts at landing and therefore less heavy loading transmitted through the leg. This is very important because it turns out that during running under low impact conditions, the Achilles tendon may load more elastic strain energy known to boost running economy. Comparatively, if you look at a typical heel strike landing pattern in running, the foot and leg is doing more of the opposite to that of a forefoot strike landing. And what I mean by that is, in the study, the reason the habitual heel strike runners produced more all-around forms of impact forces is that at heel strike, there's no ankle plantar flexion, rather there's full ankle dorsiflexion, meaning the front of the foot is cranked quite back substantially at heel strike, and this action is needed to land squarely on the heel when running. In addition, most often, but not always, but most often, hyper ankle dorsiflexion at touchdown during running is usually accompanied with a fully extended or fully unbent knee joint. These two mechanical outputs engaged at landing during heel strike running easily facilitates a longer distance separation between initial foot strike position and the mass of the body, which is the upper body. This particular positional arrangement in running is most responsible for a burst of high collisional impact at landing, followed by an extended brake force period, which multiplies the intensity rate of other impact variables. The brake force persisted longer in duration in the habitual heel strike runners, and this extended brake force period accounted for the higher levels of impact peaks, higher levels of average loading rates, and vertical instantaneous loading rates as compared with the habitual forefoot strike runners. Now, you can make your heel strike landing a little less impact intensive when running by bending your knee joint at landing, because that will help bring your foot down to land closer to the mass of the body, but you're not out of the woods entirely in avoiding other damaging physical stressors because you're still landing behind the arch when you strike heel first. This may cause impact pressure to accumulate differently and travel differently over the foot than if you landed ahead of the arch, like in a forefoot strike landing. The way the center of pressure travels over the foot when you land heel first, when you run, may actually end up shifting the foot into extreme overstraining positions during stance as compared with forefoot strike running. The video I did explaining more on that is linked down below this video in the description box as well. Getting back to the study, at landing in heel strike running, there's more peak forces, which means there's more bursts of excessive impact because there's a higher impact collision because there's just more opposing forces at work when you land just like this, squarely on the heel with an unbent, locked out knee. What does this do to the elastic structures of the lower leg, namely the Achilles tendon, and how it contributes to elastic strain energy, which is the type of energy you really want to optimize when running because it's free energy. You don't really have to work for it or expend energy to get it. Not to mention, it's really worth optimizing the elastic effectiveness in the Achilles tendon during running because doing so can make you 35% more mechanically efficient. That's why it's important to learn how to put to work the elastic properties of the Achilles tendon so that it channels more elastic strain energy. And this is why forefoot strike running may do a better job at doing just that as compared with heel strike running, whereby at heel strike, especially with a fully unbent, locked out knee, the Achilles tendon is too stretched during the phase of running associated with the greatest production of impact forces. And in the case of heel strike running, the Achilles tendon is too stretched during the phase of running that's not only associated with the most impact force generation in general, but the generation of the most amount of excessive abnormal levels of impact forces, including a compressive wave, which is a byproduct of the excessive collisional force at landing, and the prolonged brake force, both of which are brought on by a larger overstride angle, which is enabled by the combination of a fully unbent knee and a fully angled dorsiflex foot at heel strike during running. This may cause the Achilles tendon to be an ineffectual spring because the tendon is in a position where it can't recoil because it's too stretched while spending an increased amount of time enduring higher rates of excessive impact forces. In this condition, the Achilles tendon can no longer contribute elastic strain energy efficiently, which is one reason elastic energy was less abundant in the habitual heel strike runners than in the habitual forefoot strike runners. In contrast, why were the habitual forefoot strike runners able to get more elastic energy loaded into the Achilles tendon, thereby raising energy efficiency? Landing with the forefoot strike when running usually accompanies increased knee flexion or knee bend. This makes the Achilles tendon more spring enabled, whereby the researchers discovered that the habitual forefoot runners had different center of mass positions than the habitual heel strike runners. The habitual forefoot strike runners engaged a subtle forward lean. There seemed to be more of an instant shift forward of the upper body when the knee is more bent and the foot is more plantar flexed upon a touchdown. This effectively reduces the distance between initial foot strike position and the center of mass. This not only reduces the amount of time spent braking, which I'll talk about why that may have economical value in just a minute, but what's most essential is that in this position, the mass of the body is better positioned to load on the Achilles tendon. More elastic strain energy can be loaded into the tendon. Ultimately, more of a mass on spring effect is created, meaning the mass of the body is very close to being over top of the Achilles tendon at landing. The mass of the body is definitely over top of the Achilles tendon at the beginning of the stance phase. This mass on spring effect alone may do more to enhance spring loading in the Achilles tendon, and through this, there may be less mechanical and less muscular demands for propulsion than if the mass of the body was positioned farther behind the initial foot strike position, like it was in the habitual heel strike runners, which may explain why there was the differences in leg spring energy and energy economy between the two foot strike conditions. Furthermore, because the brake force period persisted in shorter duration in the habitual forefoot strike runners, and also impact peaks or sudden bursts of high impacts at landing were greatly minimized in the habitual forefoot strike runners, the muscles may not have to use up much energy to absorb impact, and through this could help leverage up more energy for better running economy. So essentially the take-home message is that landing with a forefoot strike when running seems to instantly organize other stride parameters that may enable more efficient storage of elastic strain energy in the Achilles tendon as compared with heel strike running. And the low impact nature of forefoot strike running could also help increase elastic power for better running economy with a better injury preventative promise as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit the thumbs up button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't already, where you'll stay more informed on heel strike running versus forefoot strike running, as well as more informed on the health and performance benefits of barefoot running and minimalist running. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Have fun out there on the roads and trails. Bye for now.